Pokemon has been one of those game series that I have an interesting relationship with. Don't get me wrong, I love the little guys and enjoy the world that they tell through the stories, but when it comes to the gameplay, I tend to get a bit bored because every game just kind of feels the same. In my experience, every problem is a nail, and you have a bag of hammers to smash every single one. The type of hammer doesn't really matter. If you encounter a nail that you're having trouble with, you just either hit it with a bigger hammer or a slightly different colored hammer. Now, what normal people would do in this situation would be to either play a different game or to put restrictions and rules on a playthrough and turn into a Nuzlocke. I, however, choose to not be normal, because that's boring. Instead, I'm going to shamelessly rip off a video by Jorts in which he tried to touch every Pokemon type in Tears of the Kingdom. But I'm going to use Super Mario Odyssey. The only clarifications that I'm going to make about the run is that in order to count each type as touched, I have to have a meaningful interaction with said type. For instance, walking down this hill doesn't count as a grass type, because I think that's boring. Now, if we were to defeat a grass monster or take damage in some way from the grass, then it would count. And anything done in cutscenes I won't count as well, because we aren't actually in control of Mario during though. Also, I'm not going to pre-plan the route. I actually have to explore and remember everything all off the top of my head. We aren't going for a speedrun of the game, partially because I'm rusty as hell at the game, and partially because I didn't want to min-max the route and be a sweaty gamer about it, touching the first thing possible to meet a criteria, but I did want to include a timer just so you can see where in the run I was. And finally, I'm not going to count dual types in the run. For instance, if we were to count Bowser as a type, he wouldn't be able to count as both a fire type and a dragon type. We would have to pick one. And realistically, we all know what type Bowser would really be, but I'm not doing a run of Alpha has too many types here. Just the official Pokemon types. But that's enough yapping before the run, let's get into it. Starting out in Cap Kingdom, we actually start with a couple things that I didn't think were a clear enough type to count, but I'm going to point out to be an example for how my logic mostly works in the run. First up, we have the standard Mario coin. When I was starting the run and going through the opening cutscenes, I was mentally mapping out what I was going to grab and how the levels all work together, and the first thing I thought of was grabbing a coin. And this is going to show how good of a Pokemon fan I am, even though I had a spreadsheet listing all the different types just to help me keep track of what I have and haven't grabbed. I grabbed some coins and went, oh yeah, that's my metal type done, and I looked over at my list and noticed, oh right, it's steel type, not metal type. So because of the color of these coins, I couldn't justify counting it as steel. And then the second thing is right after that we have the frog. And I couldn't decide if that counted as a water type or a grass type. So I just decided not to count it because I couldn't really tell what type. And even though I'm swimming through the water here, it kind of felt just like touching grass. It didn't feel like it was a meaningful enough interaction for it to count as touching a water type Pokemon. Luckily, Cap Kingdom isn't completely devoid of letting us take a type off the board, as after stomping out Topper, we can cross out Electric type as our first type off the board with the capture of the Spark Pylon. Face-planting into Cascade Kingdom, we get two types almost immediately. First, we get our Steel type with the Chain Chomp, and smash a Rock type, Rock. I originally wasn't going to count the Chain Chomp as Steel type because my brain went, it barks like a dog, and there's no dog type Pokemon, so I don't need to cross anything off. But as I'm writing the script, I realized the Chain Chomps are made out of metal and really sound like some type of steel hammer, so I'm going to count it as steel. The rock type is even easier to explain. It's rock. It's rock type. Now that we have the Odyssey, we can get to Sand Kingdom, where we get maybe our fastest type upon entering the kingdom, smashing this icicle right outside the Odyssey, crossing the ice type off the list. Now, even though I used to speedrun this game, and the first thing I would do in this route would be to get the moon from this bird, it never crossed my mind that this would be a flying type. By this point in the run, my mental mapping had already gotten a few things in mind for some of the future types, and I already had some really cool flying types later, so I just forgot to add the bird to the list. And because I still carry a grudge against missing this moon during speedrun attempts way more than I should have, I'm going to choose not to use the Pidgey knockoff as a flying type, because I'm petty. I was a little unsure of how to differentiate between rock and ground type, because I think of them as almost being the same thing, but luckily we can submerge Mario completely into the ground long enough to get to an area hiding a power moon. And yes, I do count this as interacting enough because we're not touching the top of it, we're actually like interacting to get to a secret area. And then I totally meant to slam Mario into the wrong spot of the ruins, giving us a death and letting us take poison type off the list. After grabbing a handful of moons, we are going to make the second biggest stretch in the entire type list, as using the Moais to see the invisible platforms on the Moai Island were just the closest thing I could think of to being psychic type. Now, normally I would just grab a couple moons, skip going through the pyramid, and move on to the next kingdom, but I actually needed to go through here and defeat Harriet in order to move the clock forwards to be nighttime. We need the nighttime to spawn the mummies in the sand, giving us a ghost type for our collection. Lake Kingdom starts off with what will probably be the most boring type, even though I love them, normal. I felt like the most normal thing we could get in Mario was a Goomba. And by capturing and then just disposing of this Goomba stack, we can cross the normal type off the list right before being able to check water type off as well by capturing a Cheep Cheep in the lake. After spending less time in Lake Kingdom than it takes to make a bowl of ramen, we head off to the Wooded Kingdom. After we land in Wooded, we completely ignore the intended path of the kingdom and instead hop up the waterfall, and at the mouth of the river, we find a Fire Bro, who we can capture and light a campfire, obviously giving us a fire type. Right after, we can open this gate, grab our grass type with the plant monster, an Uproot. Now, with as big as Wooded Kingdom is, I figured that there would be a lot more we could get here, but we already have Goombas for normal type, we already have a poison type, and Glydon doesn't spawn in until much later, and I didn't feel like beating the boss to set the kingdom to the right scenario. Finally, I jumped down to Deep Woods because I figured I would find some sort of dark type, but I never found anything that I felt could actually fit into the dark box, so then we head on to face off against Bowser in Cloud Kingdom. For only being a boss fight in an any percent run, Cloud Kingdom does give us a type. Although it may look like I was not being a good gamer here, I intentionally took damage from Bowser's hat here to be our fighting type. On a side note, I do feel like if we took the model for Bowser's hat, added some eyes, and kind of crunched the sprite down to 2D, we could get just a normal fighting type Pokemon. It isn't that far off from some of the actual ones. We've made it to roughly the halfway point in the game, and we only have 5 of the 18 types left to get. After picking ourselves up from a crash landing in Lost Kingdom, we can climb the mountain and get our flying type. Now Glydon D's nuts is much cooler than a random bird, so now you can see why I wanted to count it instead of the bird, and if that isn't flying type enough for you, we can make it a 2-for-1 deal and throw in the corpse of this hat-snatching bastard. Whichever one of these you would like to count as a type, it's the only type we're actually going to be able to count, because as much as I would like to grab our bug type here, we clearly land on a spot where there is no butterfly, and there is not a butterfly we can see when the moon spawns. So even though I know it's the butterfly moon, I can't prove that I made meaningful enough interaction with the butterfly, so I can't count it. But fortunately for us, we can cross off the bug type almost immediately after reaching Metro Kingdom. Right after reaching the mainland, we can take out some of the maggots that decide to evolve right as we get up to them. And because we are very limited in the Pokemon types we are looking for, we don't actually cross off any more types in this kingdom, even though it's one of the biggest kingdoms in the game. But unlike some kingdoms where we just decide to run through as quick as possible and get to the next kingdom where we can get more types, I did actually decide to complete the story of the kingdom and set it to world peace, as it's going to be a surprise tool to help us later. As much as I enjoy playing through the next 3 kingdoms, there aren't any missing types that I found in any of them, as we already found our ice types before getting to Snow Kingdom, we already got our water type before getting to Seaside, and as far as I know, there is no taco type Pokemon for Luncheon Kingdom. Luckily though, we get another boss ring kingdom to break the streak. I wonder which type we're going to find here. Dragon. It's dragon type. I wish I had more types left or a different boss to do a fake out with, or some sort of clever joke, but nope, we just have a dragon. After beating the dragon, we go through the entirety of Bowser's Kingdom and Moon Kingdom without running into another type. But the game isn't done, as we have the entirety of the post-game to search for the last 2 types. But right after we get to Mushroom Kingdom, we take back off for Metro Kingdom, where we hit the Moon Rock. This is where we benefit from having done World Peace earlier, as we can immediately go into the Moon Pipe sub-area without having to go back and save the city. And after grabbing the 2 moons in this sub-area, I think we can cross off the Dark type, as the structure in the middle of the room is called Pitch Black Mountain, and I think that's as close as we're getting to Dark type as we can in this game. And now the last type, Fairy. If this was Zelda, or another game where there's more fantasy elements available, this would probably be one of the easiest ones to get. Mario doesn't normally have very many fairies in the games. There's only really one game that even features fairies that I can remember, so it might be a little difficult to find them in this game. Now in Pokemon, fairy types are generally pink and cute and look so fluffy that you get cuteness aggression. Now, as much as I want to say that Princess Peach fits in this type because of pink, I didn't think she was fluffy enough to get the cuteness aggression, and also fairies I think of as kind of small, and Peach is not a short queen. However, if you notice, Peach has a fairy-like companion with her, Tiara. Now, we can't really interact with Tiara much outside of maybe like a cutscene with Peach, and although we interact plenty with Cappy, we technically play as Cappy, so I don't feel like interacting with yourself should count. Luckily though, there are a couple other fairy-like hats that we can interact with, and the first of which that I remembered about is back in Bowser's Kingdom, where we can capture a Pokeo and bring it to this monitor to interact with fairy type. And why is the timer still running? Yeah. When I put together a list of types for this video, I found out there's a 19th official type, the Stellar type. I hadn't heard of this one before, but it happens when something terastallizes. I don't know if that pronunciation is correct, and I don't know of a definition, whatever the hell terastallizing means. But after looking at some pictures of what stellar Pokemon look like, I've decided that it can be described as it says, stellar. So if we see something either really shiny or sparkly, or something related to the stars, we're going to count it as that. And obviously we can just pop into the nearest shop to get the most stellar object in the game, Mario's nipple outfit. I am absolutely kidding, because if the fairy type didn't count for Cappy, I'm not going to count Mario for stellar. But if we rewind the tape a little bit to when we were back in Mushroom Kingdom, if we look up at the ceiling in Peach's castle, we can spawn a moon out of the sunlight, and we can grab our 19th and final Pokemon type and confirm that yes, Super Mario Odyssey will indeed Pokemon. This was a fun and very, very silly idea to do for a video, even though it wasn't a hard challenge per se, but I just wanted a reason to go back and play through this game again, even though I've played through it quite a bit, but I felt like it would be the perfect game to try out a new idea for a video series. I'm looking forward to see if there's any games or even a game series that aren't Pokemon that we can try to find all the Pokemon types in. If you have any ideas for challenges for me to try, or if you think there's something that I missed in this run, leave me a comment down below, and until the next video, this has been the Wreaker of Chaos, and let chaos reign.